Hey guys, tonight you're standing in the high wilderness where the air bites harder than hunger itself. Snow stretches endlessly beneath a sky the color of old steel. The wind doesn't whistle here, it growls, low and ancient, as if the mountains themselves are warning you to leave. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, tighten your coat. The real story begins when warmth runs out. Your breath fogs instantly, forming ghosts that vanish before they finish sighing. Somewhere behind you, the last trail disappears under fresh snow. There's no road back now. Around you, the wilderness feels alive, not hostile, just indifferent. The kind of place that doesn't care whether you survive, but expects you to earn it. You hear the distant crack of ice splitting across a frozen river, and it sounds like thunder trapped under glass. They called these men mountain men, though survivors would have been closer. Hunters, trappers, wanderers, men who vanished into the frontier and returned as legends. Tonight, you'll learn how they endured a winter so cruel it froze whiskey solid and turned firewood to stone. You'll see what hunger does to pride, what silence does to sanity, and how isolation becomes its own religion. So, wrap your blanket closer. The blizzard's coming. And somewhere in that white, endless noise, a man still breathes. Steady, calm, and stubborn enough to outlast the cold itself. The wind doesn't greet you. It examines you. It slides across your face, sharp as flint, testing for weakness. The smell of pine resin cuts through the cold, mixing with the faint sweetness of smoke from a dying fire. Beneath your boots, the snow crunches like breaking glass. Every sound travels farther here, echoing through the canyons and returning thinner, as if the world is whispering your own uncertainty back at you. Before the first settlers arrived, this land was a cathedral of silence. No fences, no roads, just endless ridges stitched together by wind. The mountain men who came here weren't pioneers of glory, they were fugitives from comfort. Civilization had rules, schedules, debts. Out here, the only law was temperature. Each dawn was a negotiation between man and weather. Most days, the weather won. The survivors didn't brag about it, they just kept breathing. Your breath freezes before it leaves your lips, turning every exhale into a brief sculpture. The light is strange, soft yet piercing, as if the sun forgot how to be warm. You can almost taste metal in the air, the flavor of endurance. Behind you lies the faint trace of civilization, a river frozen in place, the memory of a campfire, footprints already half erased by drifting snow. You realize how easily history disappears here. Even your presence feels temporary. Every man who entered this wilderness brought something to lose, a debt, a memory, a name too heavy to carry anywhere else. The mountains didn't care. They accepted everyone equally, then decided who would leave. The trappers learned early that nature wasn't cruel. It was consistent. The storm didn't hate you. It simply didn't notice you existed. There's a strange kind of peace in that. You stop expecting mercy and start earning silence. At night, the cold deepens into sound. It creaks through the logs of your cabin, murmurs through the cracks in your gloves, sings low beneath your ribs. You listen to it the way others listen to sermons. The wind preaches patience. The snow teaches humility. Each lesson costs heat. Every man out here becomes a philosopher by necessity. Reflection fills the space hunger leaves behind. Some find wisdom, others just find echoes. The stars, when visible, look closer than they should, bright, violent, impossible. You count them out of habit, not belief. They don't care for your wishes, they care for your watchfulness. Somewhere in that frozen ceiling, you imagine the constellations laughing quietly at your persistence. You're not a hero to them. You're just another spark trying not to fade. And yet, for a moment, that feels like reason enough to stay alive. By morning, everything you touched the night before has frozen solid. Boots, rope, breath, resolve. You move carefully, not because the ice is fragile, but because you are. Every action feels like translation, warmth into motion, fatigue into survival. You melt a cup of snow for water, knowing it holds the memory of storms older than language. The first sip burns cold. It tastes like honesty. Sometimes, the only sound you hear for hours is your heartbeat. Slow, uncertain, real. The rhythm keeps you grounded, like the ticking of a clock inside a world without time. You start to measure distance not in miles, but in breaths you can still see. Each one leaves proof that you're here, however briefly. You learn quickly that the wilderness doesn't reward noise, it listens. And if you listen long enough, it starts to tell you things. The men who survived the first winter learned to speak less and notice more. They read snow like scripture, each drift a story about wind, each track a sermon on hunger. A broken branch meant visitors, a missing trap meant luck, or theft, or both. Out here, details kept you alive. Forgetfulness could bury you faster than frost. The mountain didn't need to kill you, it just needed you to stop paying attention. Civilization called these men uncivilized. They were wrong. Civilization is easy when walls do the remembering for you. Out here, memory freezes unless you guard it yourself. Every tool, every scar, every campfire was a record of persistence. History may never write their names, but the snow remembers their shapes. That's more permanence than monuments offer. A statue can be toppled. A mountain forgets on its own terms. When dusk falls again, you hear wolves. Distant, low, unhurried. They sound neither hungry nor afraid, only certain. Their cries don't echo, they anchor. You understand suddenly why the old trappers called them brothers. Both of you hunt warmth in a world that offers little. You pull your coat tighter, and for the first time, the cold feels like company. That's the strange mercy of wilderness. It teaches loneliness how to belong. And as night closes in, you realize something quietly miraculous. No one is coming to save you, and somehow that feels freeing. Out here, survival isn't a test, it's a conversation. You speak in breath, frost, and endurance. The mountains answer in silence. Together, you make meaning the way snow makes rivers, slowly, invisibly, without applause. Your shelter isn't much. A square of logs, a roof that sighs when the wind presses too hard, and a door that closes if you ask politely. The walls bleed cold, but they also remember heat. Each board holds a story. Where it fell, who cut it, how it resisted. You can smell the sap still alive in the wood, faint and sweet beneath the smoke. The cabin doesn't promise safety, only shelter. Out here, that's enough. Inside, the air feels thicker, part breath, part hope. The fireplace crackles weakly, like a tired conversation. You feed it twigs one by one, coaxing the flame the way you'd soothe a frightened animal. Heat takes time to trust you. You watch the light crawl up the walls, gold softening the rough grain of the logs. Shadows move slowly, deliberate as prayer. It's not beautiful, but it's human. A small, stubborn defiance against everything outside. The floor creaks under your boots, the sound almost warm in its familiarity. You sit on a stool made from a tree that once stood taller than your courage. The seat wobbles. You smile anyway. Imperfection feels honest here. You pour snowmelt into a tin pot, place it over the fire, and listen as it whispers toward boiling. The smell of pine, smoke, and iron fills the room, sharp enough to remind you that comfort is always temporary. Outside, the storm builds again. Wind clawing at the walls, frost slithering through the smallest cracks. The sound isn't frightening anymore. It's rhythmic, almost hypnotic. The mountain is singing in a language of pressure and persistence. You answer by adding another log to the fire. That's how communication works out here, call and response between elements and endurance. You stop fighting the cold and start learning its rhythm. The first trappers used cabins like these not as homes, but as pauses. They moved with the seasons, following rivers, herds, and rumor. A roof was a temporary luxury, not a claim. Inside these walls, maps were drawn, furs dried, wounds cleaned. Some prayed, most didn't. Faith here wasn't about gods. It was about the hope that the wood wouldn't split overnight. Every structure was a compromise between exhaustion and ambition. You run your hand along the table's edge, feeling every notch, every scar carved by knives, by boredom, by time. Men before you left marks to prove they existed, initials, dates, small oaths scratched into grain. You add nothing. The absence feels sacred. Sometimes preservation is the truest form of respect. You let their ghosts rest quietly in the wood, their stories trapped in the silence between creaks. The fire burns lower, shifting from orange to blue. You wrap yourself in a fur coat, heavy, smelling of smoke and the animal that once owned it. Strange comfort, wearing something that used to breathe. Warmth borrowed from a life that ended so yours could continue. The irony isn't lost on you. Survival, you realize, is just a series of negotiations with the dead. You try to be polite about it. You eat what you have, a strip of dried meat, hard bread softened over steam, coffee that tastes like endurance. It's not enough, but it keeps you human. Hunger here isn't a tragedy, it's a companion. It reminds you that you're still tethered to life, however lightly. Every bite feels earned. Civilization might call this suffering. You call it evidence. As the storm howls, you notice how the cabin trembles slightly, not in fear, but in dialogue. The wind speaks, the walls reply. The two have argued for centuries, and neither ever wins. You lie back, watching light flicker through smoke. Each shadow moves like memory, half alive, half gone. You think of all the men who've done this before. Same fire, same hunger, same quiet acceptance. You realize survival doesn't evolve, it repeats. Your eyelids grow heavy, weighted by the slow rhythm of crackling wood. Outside, the snow erases everything. Footprints, mistakes, yesterday's fears. That's the kindness of winter. It forgets for you. Tomorrow, you'll wake to a world reshaped overnight. For now, you let the cold hum its lullaby through the logs. You're not afraid of it anymore. You've both agreed to share the same silence. Somewhere between waking and sleep, you hear the wind whisper something that almost sounds like, "Stay." Whether it's warning or invitation doesn't matter. Out here, every word means the same thing. Keep breathing. And so you do. The first thing you notice in the morning isn't light, it's temperature. The kind that makes your teeth ache before you even open your mouth. The fire is dead, leaving behind a bed of white ash like the ghost of warmth. Your breath drifts upward, visible, fragile, unsure where to go. Outside, frost flowers bloom across the window, delicate as lace, deadly as truth. Each one glows faintly in the pale dawn. Beauty here is just danger in disguise. You strike a spark, coaxing new flame from flint and stubbornness. The sound is sharp, metallic, too loud for the silence it interrupts. You blow gently, smoke curling upward like an exhausted prayer. Fire catches, small, nervous, but real. You feel its heat crawl across your fingers, grateful and possessive. In this world, the act of making fire is less a task and more a resurrection. Every morning, you resurrect yourself with it. There's an old saying among mountain men: fire is a friend until it remembers what you are. You keep your distance. The line between comfort and disaster here is paper thin. The cabin's timber walls carry the scars of those who forgot. Charred patches near the floor, blackened nails, small sermons written in soot. You feed the fire slowly, learning humility from the flames. Heat, like pride, must be earned in portions. Your fingers are raw. The nails cracked, the skin split at the seams. You wrap them in cloth, not to protect, but to remember they're still yours. Frostbite isn't sudden. It's seductive. It whispers promises of numbness, of rest, of letting go. That's how the cold wins, not by force, but by persuasion. You shake your hands, forcing blood back into stubborn veins. The pain is sharp, immediate, alive. It's the price of keeping ownership over your own flesh. You sip from your tin cup, coffee so bitter it feels like advice. The steam rises, smelling of wood and metal, carrying the illusion of comfort. For a few minutes, the world feels smaller, containable. You warm your palms against the mug, and for that brief time, you could almost forget the miles of emptiness waiting outside. Civilization is nothing more than this. Warmth you don't have to chase. Fire is a teacher that demands tuition daily. Too little fuel, and it dies. Too much, and it consumes you. You remember stories of trappers who fell asleep too close to the flame, waking to find their blankets smoking or their boots melting. The mountain doesn't grant second chances. Mistakes here don't echo. They vanish. You add another log, whispering thanks like it's listening. Maybe it is. Everything in the wilderness has ears, even the silence. You press your palm against the cabin wall. It's cold but solid. The logs have survived worse winters than this, and you can feel their history. Rings within rings, patience layered into wood. The mountain men called cabins companions with bones. They creak when they dream. You've started answering back. Talking to the walls isn't madness here, it's manners. Through the window, daylight glints on the snow in shards of blue and gold. Each gust of wind sweeps across the ridge, erasing the world one layer at a time. It's strange how erasure can look like peace. You watch until your eyes sting from brightness, then turn back to the dim cabin where the fire still flickers. Inside, you're warm. Outside, eternity waits. The line between both feels thinner than breath. A knock echoes once, just wood settling, but your heart still races. Out here, sound always arrives with uncertainty. You listen again. Nothing. The silence returns, pretending it never left. You exhale, smiling at your own instinct to expect company where none exists. That's how humans betray themselves, by hoping. Hope, like frost, sneaks in through cracks. You stretch your arms toward the fire, skin glowing amber in the light. The warmth feels earned, the kind that softens your thoughts. You catch yourself drifting, watching smoke climb, then vanish near the rafters. For a moment, you envy it, something that can rise and disappear without consequence. Then you laugh quietly. Smoke, after all, only looks free. It still needs something to burn. As the day crawls forward, you pack your gear, traps, rifle, dried meat. You check everything twice, not because you mistrust yourself, but because you understand what forgetting costs. You glance back at the cabin before stepping into the snow. The fire crackles, the air hums, and for a heartbeat, you could swear it nods. Companions with bones indeed. You smile and pull the door closed, sealing in your warmth like a promise. The cold meets you halfway down the hill. You meet it with quiet respect. This is how peace works in the mountains. Not through comfort, but through coexistence. By midday, the world is white noise and distance. The snow reflects sunlight so fiercely that your eyes ache behind their lids. You tie a strip of fur over your face, but light still seeps through, relentless. Every step sinks, every breath stings, and the silence presses closer. Hunger begins as a whisper, a soft reminder that time hasn't stopped yet. But it grows louder the longer you ignore it, echoing in rhythm with your heartbeat. The first mountain men didn't eat by schedule, they ate by opportunity. Their meals depended on traps, bullets, and luck. Mostly luck. Dried venison, beans, lard, whatever nature didn't object to giving. When it didn't give, they improvised. Boiled leather, bark soup, roasted roots dug from frozen earth. Some swore pine needles could be steeped into tea. Others said hunger itself made anything taste like survival. Either way, you chew, slowly, convincing yourself flavor is a memory you don't miss. You check your traps. One empty, one stolen, one frozen solid. That's 3 hours of work for nothing. You curse softly, the sound evaporating into cold. The snow hides every clue. Out here, hunger isn't just absence, it's theft. Something always takes before you can. The tracks near your trap are small. Fox, maybe marten. You admire its precision. Even the animals here are efficient in desperation. You reset the mechanism. As if patience could trick fate into fairness, you find half a rabbit caught in another snare, the rest claimed by the night. You hold it up, half grateful, half disgusted. The wilderness never wastes time pretending to be kind. You clean it quickly, wrapping the meat in cloth before heading back. Blood stains the snow, bright against the white. It looks almost artistic, a painting of necessity. You remember reading once that red means life. Out here, it just means the day's not over yet. Back at the cabin, the fire greets you like memory restored. You hang the meat over the flame, the smell rising immediately. Metallic, raw, unmistakably honest. The sizzle sounds like applause for effort. You add a pinch of salt, a relic of civilization worth more than gold in this world. The aroma fills the room, earthy and grounding. You don't wait for tenderness. You eat while it's still steaming. Fingers numb but satisfied. Hunger's voice fades to a hum. There's an intimacy to eating alone in silence. Every bite feels like confession, chewing, swallowing, accepting. You remember meals in cities, chatter and clinking metal. Out here, the only sound is breathing. Food doesn't bring joy, it brings permission to continue. You finish the last piece, wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, and sit still. Gratitude arrives late, slow but sincere. Civilization taught you manners. The wilderness teaches you thanks. Outside, wind moans low through the trees, a tone somewhere between warning and lullaby. You step out to throw bones into the snow. The air bites harder now, each gust colder than the last. The forest around you feels older tonight, as if watching. You think of the animals hiding in burrows, fur wrapped tight, stomachs half empty too. Survival, you realize, isn't competition here. It's communion. Everything that breathes is negotiating with hunger. You remember a story told by trappers about a man who starved but never stopped smiling. They said he'd gone mountain mad, believing hunger was divine punishment for waste. Before dying, he thanked the cold for keeping him company. You don't know if the tale was true, but it fits. In the wilderness, even suffering earns mythology. Pain becomes poetry once it's over. You're not sure if that's wisdom or delusion. You decide it doesn't matter. Back inside, you find yourself staring at the flames again. The light flickers across your hands, painting shadows that look like movement. You realize how easily imagination grows in solitude. Hunger might fade, but craving never does. For warmth, for sound, for proof that someone else is alive. You stir the fire and listen to it breathe. The sound is enough. It almost feels like language. You lie down, the fur blanket rough against your cheek. Your stomach no longer protests, it purrs in quiet relief. The snow outside keeps falling, steady as heartbeat. You feel small, tired, content. The mountain hums, indifferent but close. Tomorrow you'll hunt again. Tonight you rest, belly full, body aching, soul still negotiating with the dark. And for a moment, you realize hunger wasn't your enemy. It was just your reminder to keep moving. Night arrives without warning. One moment, you can see your breath drifting in calm spirals. The next, the world is erased. Snow slams sideways, wind shrieking through the cracks of your cabin like a living thing, desperate to be heard. The temperature drops so fast the air seems to break when you move. The smell of pine smoke thickens, trapped between the walls and the storm. It feels less like weather, more like judgment. You brace the door with a beam of wood, the hinges crying out. The sound disappears instantly under the howl outside. Snow whips against the window pane, each flake hitting like a whisper with intent. You wrap your coat tighter, the fur stiff with frost. Every instinct screams, stay awake. The cold isn't something you sleep through, it's something you negotiate with. The mountain doesn't kill the impatient. It just waits politely until they stop arguing. The fire flares, bright and defiant, painting the walls orange. You feed it carefully, like nursing a heartbeat. Sparks leap upward, furious at gravity, then vanish. You listen to them die. It's strangely comforting. The sound of persistence ending quietly, without complaint. The mountain men used to call blizzards white choirs because of the way wind moaned over the ridges. It sounded almost holy, as if the wilderness was praying for your humility. Your supplies are modest: dried meat, a little coffee, some grain. You ration it with the discipline of a priest. Each bite becomes a ritual. You stir the pot slowly, the steam fogging your eyelashes. The smell of fat melting into ash fills the room. It's not pleasant, but it's alive, and that's enough. Out here, meals don't comfort, they confirm. They remind you that the world still lets you participate. Hours pass. The wind changes tone, softer now, but deeper, as though the storm has learned to breathe through its teeth. You press your ear to the wall. The sound feels closer, like it's circling. The pressure in the air shifts. The cabin creaks. You whisper, "Stay with me," unsure if you're talking to the structure or yourself. Both listen. Both obey. The fire pops once, loud enough to make you jump. You laugh quietly, half from relief, half from madness. Out here, the difference blurs. You reach for your journal, fingers trembling. The ink barely flows, thick with cold. You write slowly. Still here. Storm loud. Fire brave. The words look childish, almost holy in their simplicity. You close the book and slide it under your blanket. History won't remember these notes, but they remember you. The act of writing feels like proof. That thought still exists, even when everything else freezes. Somewhere outside, something cracks. Maybe a tree, maybe the mountain shifting. The sound rolls across the valley, deep and final. The floor trembles beneath you. For a second, you imagine the whole world collapsing in slow motion, snow swallowing everything. Then it stops. The silence that follows is heavier than noise. You let it sit, pressing against your chest like a hand reminding you you're still warm enough to notice. You toss another log on the fire and watch the flames stretch toward the roof. Each flicker reflects off the frost crawling across the windows. The pattern looks almost deliberate, tiny rivers of light carving through darkness. You trace one with your eyes, following its curve until it fades. That's how life feels here. Luminous, temporary, beautiful, precisely because it can't last. You smile at the thought, a kind of truce with impermanence. Your hands ache from cold, but you don't hide them. Pain proves connection. You hold them over the flame, palms glowing like amber. For a brief moment, you feel both powerful and fragile, the twin truths of survival. The wind roars again, as if angry at your small victory. You close your eyes and listen to it rage. It can have the night. You'll keep the warmth. When dawn finally arrives, it doesn't bring light, just the absence of darkness. The snow outside is piled high against the door, the sky a washed-out grey. The world looks clean, emptied of noise and arrogance. You step outside into a silence that feels earned. Every sound, even your breath, feels too loud for it. You nod to the mountains. They nod back, pretending not to. Respect here is mutual, if quiet. And as you return to the cabin, one thought lingers like heat in the ash. The storm wasn't trying to destroy you. It was just reminding you how small peace really is. Days pass in a rhythm so slow it stops feeling like time. You wake, stoke the fire, melt snow, check traps, repeat. The monotony should dull your senses, but instead, it sharpens them. You begin to notice things you never did before, the way the air hums before wind changes, the difference between snow that whispers and snow that hisses, the subtle groan of trees thinking about surrender. Silence, you realize, is full of grammar. At first, it unnerves you. The quiet presses too hard, like a hand on your shoulder from no one there. You fill it with muttered words. half-thought songs, anything to hear proof of yourself. But eventually, you stop resisting. The silence isn't absence, it's presence. Vast, ancient, endlessly patient. You start listening. It doesn't say much, but it says it well. You learn that silence has moods. Mornings are curious. It listens to your movements like a polite audience. Afternoons are contemplative, thick with waiting. Nights are personal. It comes closer, almost affectionate, humming beneath your skin. Sometimes it feels like someone breathing beside you. You've stopped calling it loneliness. Loneliness needs witnesses. Silence doesn't. You begin speaking to objects. The fire, the door, your rifle. Not because you've lost your mind, but because everything here responds eventually. The fire answers with crackles, the wood with creaks, the rifle with a dignified silence that feels like understanding. Civilization might call this madness. Out here, it's just fluency. You've learned the language of things that don't need you but tolerate you anyway. The old trappers had stories about men who went snow-blind in the soul. Too much silence, too little company. They'd start talking to the wind, and sometimes the wind talked back. You wonder if they were really insane or just ahead of their time. Maybe they'd found what philosophers search for, a conversation honest enough to include emptiness. The mountain doesn't answer with words, it answers with weather. One afternoon, the quiet breaks. A crow lands on the roof, calling once, a hoarse, ancient sound. You look up, startled, almost grateful. Its cry feels like punctuation after days of unbroken sentences. You step outside, and it watches you with the calm of something that's seen worse winters than yours. Then it flies off, vanishing into white. The silence that follows feels lighter somehow, as if both of you agreed not to ruin it. At night, you write again. Silence isn't empty. It's full of questions that stop needing answers. The ink freezes halfway through, so you finish the thought in your head. You close the journal and sit by the fire. The flames sway gently, their rhythm slower than your breathing. The sound fills the space perfectly. Not loud, not soft, just enough. You think of all the noises you once thought you needed, voices, clocks, cities. None of them feel necessary anymore. You lie back on your cot, the fur cold but forgiving. Outside, snow drifts silently past the window, each flake falling with purpose. You watch until your eyes blur. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a river sleeps under its own frozen skin. The world, for once, isn't demanding anything of you. You exhale, and for a moment, you swear the silence exhales back. Before sleep takes you, you whisper to the dark, "Thanks for staying." The air stirs slightly, as if bowing in return. You close your eyes, weightless in stillness. The fire hums one last note, and the mountain answers with a long, patient sigh. And for the first time, you understand what peace sounds like when it finally learns your name. You wake to silence too perfect to trust. The world outside your cabin looks sculpted, not real, a landscape of bone-white stillness and deceptive calm. The air bites sharper today. It doesn't sting, it gnaws. You move slowly, the floor groaning beneath your weight. Hunger returns before memory does. It's not polite about it. Your stomach growls loud enough to remind the room you're still human. The mountain grins, unseen. They told stories about a trapper once called Reuben Pike. He came west in 1829 with a rifle, a dog, and the kind of optimism only ignorance can afford. When the snow came early that year, he vanished into the Tetons. Weeks later, they found his cabin. Roof collapsed, door hanging loose. Inside, they said, everything was frozen in place, his boots, his coffee cup, even his shadow against the wall, but the fire pit was warm, and beside it, a single bone stripped clean. The truth of that story didn't matter. It became a warning told around every campfire. Never underestimate hunger. Men feared it more than wolves, more than blizzards, more than God. Hunger didn't roar, it whispered. It convinced you that bark might be bread, that candle wax might be fat, that your own fingers might be negotiable. Some called it madness, others called it adaptation. In the end, no one knew the difference. Out here, sanity froze faster than water. You light your own fire, watching flame reflect in your tin cup. The coffee tastes like ashes and resolve. Outside, the snow creaks, a sound made only by cold too deep for mercy. You wonder what Reuben thought during his last days. Did he talk to the fire? Did he laugh at the irony that the mountains feed you beauty and starvation at once? You stir the cup slowly, pretending warmth is victory. It's not, but it's close enough. Hunger changes your thoughts first. You begin to measure time by how long you can ignore your body. The mountain men said after 3 days without meat, you start to dream of color. Bright, feverish visions of stew and honey and rivers made of broth. After 5, you stop dreaming altogether. The mind turns polite, efficient. You stop craving taste and start craving texture. Anything to remind you that chewing still matters. You remember a line from an old journal. A man doesn't starve from lack of food. He starves from lack of options. It was written by a trapper who boiled his own moccasins for supper. They said the leather softened after hours and smelled like memory. You imagine the taste: smoke, salt, and surrender. Civilization would call it disgusting. The wilderness calls it resourceful. Perspective shifts easily when pride freezes. The irony is that hunger brings clarity. It strips away everything unimportant. No past, no future, no philosophy, just need, pure and undeniable. You realize why so many of these men became legends, not because they conquered nature, but because they stopped pretending they were separate from it. You eat to live, the same way the wolf hunts or the tree drinks sunlight. Morality melts under frost. Only continuation remains. Later that day, you find an old trap, half buried in snow. The metal is rusted, but intact. You brush it clean, hearing the faint click of its mechanism. The sound is both terrifying and reassuring. Proof that something still works out here. You set it, not for fur, not for pride, but for the quiet promise of meat. The mountain doesn't owe you success. It only owes you the chance to try again. Night returns quickly, carrying the smell of wood smoke and surrender. You hang your traps near the tree line and retreat to your cabin. The hunger hums beneath your ribs, quieter now, but insistent. You lie beside the fire, feeling it breathe. Every pop of wood sounds like the mountain's slow applause for your persistence. Tomorrow may bring nothing. But tonight, you have a roof, a flame, and the idea of hope. And sometimes, that's the same as a meal. Before sleep, you murmur a quiet thanks to Reuben Pike, myth, man, or memory. His story isn't a warning anymore. It's company, The snow crunches differently tonight. You can feel it, the rhythm, the weight, the way it pauses between steps. Something alive is moving just beyond the circle of light cast by your fire. You sit still, every sense stretching outward. The night smells of pine, iron, and something else. Wild, warm, deliberate. You hear breathing that isn't yours, not close, not far, just watching. Wolves had a strange reputation among mountain men. Some feared them as omens, others admired them as equals. They weren't villains in this world, just competitors in a shared experiment of endurance. Both of you hunted, both of you froze, both of you obeyed hunger's schedule. The difference was honesty. The wolf never lied about what it wanted. You could respect that kind of simplicity. Civilization complicates hunger. Nature doesn't. You lift your rifle slowly, not to shoot, but to listen better. The sound stops. The forest holds its breath. You wait. 1 second, 2, 10. Then it moves again, circling, closer this time. The firelight catches a flicker of grey fur, then nothing. You exhale through your nose, low and steady. Wolves understand calm better than fear. Panic smells loud. You sit still, letting it decide what kind of creature you are. In the distance, another howl rises. Long, hollow, ancient. The sound vibrates through your bones like memory. It's not threatening, it's declarative. I'm here. That's all it means. You find yourself answering under your breath, a soft hum of acknowledgement. The forest doesn't mind. Communication out here is simple. Sound and silence, question and breath. The wolf calls again, closer now. You realize you're smiling. Loneliness always mistakes danger for conversation. You remember stories of trappers who swore wolves saved their lives. One man said he followed a pack through the mountains for days, eating what they left behind. Another claimed he shared his fire with a wounded wolf during a storm, neither daring to move closer. Both lived. The frontier blurred the line between predator and prey. Companionship came in strange shapes when warmth was rare. The fire sputters, throwing sparks into the air like stars too impatient to rise. You toss another log on and glance toward the tree line. Two eyes reflect briefly, see bright, curious, measuring. They blink once, then vanish. You whisper, "Good night, neighbor," knowing it's ridiculous, but also knowing it's understood. Respect is currency here, and you pay it willingly. The forest rewards humility more than skill. You sit by the flames until the last crackle fades. Outside, the snow continues to fall in soft avalanches of quiet. You hear distant howls again, layered, harmonic, alive. The wolves are talking to each other, not you, but it still feels like inclusion. You imagine their breath fogging the air, their paws sinking into snow older than your name. Out here, even predators move with grace. The world's hierarchy feels gentler when everyone's cold. Inside your cabin, the warmth feels temporary, fragile. You lie down, eyes open, listening to the song outside, half threat, half lullaby. You think of all the things civilization fears and names wild. Maybe wildness isn't chaos, maybe it's honesty without apology. You close your eyes, smiling faintly at the thought. Somewhere out there, the wolf blinks back, content with your understanding. Sleep comes slow but steady. The last thing you hear isn't wind or fire. It's the low hum of coexistence. And for once, you don't feel alone. By midwinter, solitude becomes currency. You start talking to objects again, the rifle, the kettle, the empty chair. The replies aren't words, but you hear them anyway. Everything that survives here earns a voice. Sometimes the silence itself feels conversational. Then, one afternoon, you see movement in the valley, smoke twisting lazily from a camp that isn't yours. The sight feels impossible, like a memory wandering too far from home. You descend cautiously, snow crunching in sync with your heartbeat. The air smells faintly of animal fat and old tobacco. A shape moves by the fire. A man, wrapped in fur, his face hidden beneath frost. He doesn't speak. You nod. He nods back. That's enough. In the wilderness, politeness wastes warmth. He gestures to his pack, pelts, dried meat, a few tools older than his hands. You trade salt for jerky, silence for recognition. Both are valuable here. No one ever remembers the names of these men, not truly. They pass through journals as ghosts, met a stranger near the ridge, shared fire, moved on. But that brief exchange meant survival. Trade was less about goods and more about proof that another human still existed somewhere in this endless white. You both know the odds. Neither asks questions. Out here, curiosity can get you killed. You trade efficiently, gratefully, and then part ways like polite phantoms. As you climb back toward your cabin, snow begins to fall again. Slow, thick, forgiving. You can still see the smoke from his camp rising through the trees, curling like a promise you're not supposed to follow. You imagine him doing the same, watching your smoke fade into distance, wondering if you were real or just loneliness wearing human shape. Both answers would make sense. In a place this quiet, even hallucinations learn manners. Back in your cabin, you unpack the jerky and light a fire. The meat tastes like salt and mercy. Each bite feels earned twice, once by him, once by you. You chew slowly, thinking about how many lives have brushed past each other in this wilderness without ever learning names. Civilization calls that tragedy. Out here, it's efficiency. Connection doesn't need permanence, just acknowledgement. A nod, a flame, a trade, a survival. You open your journal and write, traded with a man who might have been memory, paid in silence, received warmth. The ink freezes briefly on the page before drying. You close the book, smiling faintly. That's enough record. You don't need history to notice you. The snow outside already knows your story. It's been listening since you arrived, writing it in drifts that no one will ever read. That night, the wind returns, softer now, almost conversational. You think of the man in the valley, his campfire burning low. Somewhere, he's probably thinking of yours. The thought feels strangely intimate. You're both alone, but not separate. Loneliness, it seems, is only unbearable when it's one-sided. Out here, even isolation finds symmetry. Sleep comes late, heavy as snow. You dream of fires that never die, hundreds of them scattered across the mountains, tiny islands of persistence glowing in a sea of white. Each one a heartbeat, a story, a quiet refusal to vanish. When you wake, you half expect to see them still burning. But the world, as always, has returned to silence. It's okay. You carry one of them inside you now. In the morning, you step outside and breathe the cold until it stings. You look toward the ridge where his smoke once rose, and for a moment, You swear you see it again. Just a faint line, wavering, uncertain. Then it's gone. You nod toward the horizon at a gesture of thanks to the ghosts that still keep company. Out here, memory is the only currency that never runs out. And for the first time in weeks, the wind sounds less lonely. It starts with a spark. Too small to matter, too stubborn to fade. You crouch beside it, hands cupped around its fragile pulse. The air is sharp enough to cut your knuckles open, but you don't notice. You breathe life into it until the flame lifts, trembling but proud. The smell of smoke fills your nose, pine, ash, and something else, relief. Fire doesn't forgive easily, but once it does, it loves fiercely. You whisper, "Stay," and it does. Mountain men called it the companion. They said a good fire was worth more than gold, more than prayer. You didn't worship it, exactly. You negotiated. It gave light, heat, protection, and the illusion of company. In return, you promised fuel, attention, respect. Those who broke that covenant froze quietly in their sleep. You learned early that the flame is both servant and God. The trick is to serve it back. The wood you burn tonight isn't dry, but it tries. Smoke rolls upward in slow curls, tracing invisible maps into the dark. Your eyes sting, watering from devotion rather than discomfort. You sit close enough to feel the heat kiss your cheeks. Outside, snow falls without sound, but inside, everything crackles. There's a rhythm to it, a steady percussion that fills the silence between heartbeats. You realize it's been days since you've spoken aloud. You say, "Thank you," and the fire answers with a pop. Somewhere in the night, the wind finds you again. It presses against the door like an uninvited guest. The flame wavers, then steadies. You watch, holding your breath. The orange glow bends but doesn't break. It flickers defiantly, painting your face in trembling light. You grin, teeth catching the glow. The wind hisses as if insulted. The fire hums, victorious but modest. You've never admired anything so alive. You think of all the fires that came before this one, those that saved men, burned cabins, signaled for rescue, or betrayed locations to enemies. Fire has no morality, it simply exists. Civilization calls it dangerous. Out here, it's sacred. The mountain doesn't care what burns, only that something does. You throw another log in, and the flames rise with enthusiasm. You envy that kind of purpose. Hours pass, but you don't sleep. You watch the logs collapse inward, glowing red, like bones remembering warmth. You realize how much of survival is just observation. Not action, not dominance, but patience. Everything that lasts here does so by waiting well. You rest your chin on your hands, eyes half-lidded. The sound of crackling fills your chest like heartbeat borrowed from the world itself. It feels intimate, steady, trustworthy. At some point, you stop feeling cold altogether. The fire's heat seeps through your skin, into your bones, into thought itself. For a terrifying moment you think, I could just stay like this forever. But forever burns too fast. You pull back, suddenly aware of how fragile warmth becomes when comfort turns to temptation. The flame sighs in sympathy. You add more wood and whisper? Not yet. The fire seems to nod. Maybe you're both learning restraint. Morning arrives disguised as grey light. The snow outside glows faintly blue, untouched and endless. Inside, the fire still burns. Smaller now, quieter, but alive. It's done something extraordinary. It's lasted the night. You kneel, stir the embers gently, and feel gratitude rise through your fingertips. Continuity in a place this harsh feels like miracle. You didn't conquer the cold, you just outlasted it once more. You pour coffee, still bitter but holy. Steam curls upward, rejoining the smoke above. You sip slowly, letting the warmth settle behind your ribs. The fire hums low, content with its own persistence. You smile, whispering, "Good work." Outside, the world is indifferent. Inside, light flickers. That's enough contrast to call it victory. As you pack your gear for another day, you glance back one last time. The coals pulse like quiet stars, red, patient, eternal. And you think, maybe that's what survival really is. Just finding something small that refuses to go out. The river sleeps now, thick and pale beneath a sheet of glass. You walk along its edge, every step producing a sound like the snapping of brittle bones. Beneath the ice, the current still moves, quiet and unseen, whispering in the language of patience. The air smells sharp. Iron, snow, and faint decay. You kneel and touch the surface. It's colder than truth, smoother than silence. The world holds its breath as if waiting for you to listen. Mountain men feared rivers more than wolves. A wolf might test your courage, but a frozen river tested your judgment. It looked solid until it didn't. One misplaced step could erase your existence without spectacle or sound. They called it white water, not because of its purity, but because it buried its sins under beauty. Every winter claimed a few, men who trusted stillness too much. Out here, you learn quickly, motion means life, and silence can kill. You kneel, pressing your ear against the ice. At first, you hear nothing, then a low hum, distant but alive. The river speaks in pulses, rhythmic, old as time. You can almost hear it negotiating with the cold. Let me sleep, but don't stop me. You close your eyes and listen longer. Civilization teaches you to speak. The wilderness teaches you to hear. Beneath the surface, the world is still working. That feels comforting. Proof that movement persists, even unseen. There's a story the old trappers told about a man who listened too long. He claimed the river spoke his name. They found him days later, kneeling, frozen in prayer beside the water. Some said it was madness. Others said he'd simply answered the wrong god. You think about him now, half smiling. Maybe he just found something worth hearing. Maybe silence had been talking to him his whole life, and the river was the first thing that replied. You chip a hole in the ice with your knife, small and deliberate. The water below glimmers darkly, its breath steaming into the cold air. You lower your tin cup, filling it halfway. The liquid burns your fingers with cold. You sip carefully, tasting minerals, time, and something that feels like gratitude. This isn't just water, it's continuation disguised as necessity. You laugh softly. Even thirst has philosophy here. A fish flashes beneath the surface, quick, silver, free. You blink, surprised. Life still moves where everything looks dead. The sight fills you with warmth, sharper than fire. You think of all the things still flowing under ice. Blood, memory, stubbornness. The river, the heart, the will, all versions of movement refusing finality. You whisper, keep going, unsure if you mean it, for the fish, the river, or yourself. The wind changes direction, brushing your face with something almost kind. You stand, feeling your knees ache, bones creaking like frozen wood. The horizon is grey again, not menacing, just endless. You pack your tools and begin the slow walk home. Each crunch of snow beneath your boots feels rhythmic, meditative. Maybe that's what the river was trying to teach. That flow doesn't always look like motion. Sometimes it's endurance disguised as stillness. By the time you reach your cabin, the day is already collapsing. You hang your coat, sit by the fire, and pour the last of your melted snow into a pot. The hiss as it boils reminds you of the river's song, soft, insistent, infinite. You stir it absent-mindedly, smiling. The wilderness has its own religion, and you've finally learned its prayer. You drink slowly, letting warmth and cold meet halfway in your chest. For once, they seem to get along. Outside, the ice cracks faintly in the distance, not breaking, just adjusting. You listen, nod, and whisper back, "I hear you." The mountain doesn't reply, but the silence feels answered. That night, the wind arrives differently. Not a storm, too quiet for that, but heavy, curious, deliberate. It moves through the trees in long sighs, circling the cabin like a thought that refuses to settle. The door rattles once, twice, then stills. You lift your head from the cot and listen. There's rhythm in it, a pattern too measured to be random. For a moment, you almost think someone's knocking. In the old days, trappers called these winds visitors. They believed the spirits of lost wanderers returned with the gusts, checking on the living. When snow howled through cracks in the walls, they said it was conversation. When a fire flickered for no reason, it meant someone unseen was standing too close. Skeptics laughed, of course, but even they lowered their voices when the wind found its voice. Out here, superstition and sanity kept the same bed. You sit up, the fur blanket sliding to the floor. The air smells faintly of ozone and pine sap. Your candle trembles, flame bowing politely to an invisible guest. You say nothing. In this place, words feel like trespass. The walls creak softly, not in protest, but recognition. It feels like the cabin itself is remembering. Every life it's sheltered, every fire it's watched die. The sound of the wind slipping through the chimney becomes almost melodic, a tune older than language. You whisper, "If you're here, stay a while." The fire pops once, then steadies. You take that as agreement. The temperature drops slightly, enough to make your breath visible again. You watch it rise and mingle with the smoke. There's comfort in that. The idea that breath, like memory, never really leaves. Maybe the mountain men were right. Maybe the wind carries what the snow forgets. You remember a story told by an old French trapper about a blizzard that spoke his wife's name. He followed it for 3 days, convinced she was calling him home. When they found him, he was smiling, frozen upright against a pine. His campfire still burned beside him. People said he'd lost his mind. You're not so sure. Maybe he just followed the only voice that still knew how to find him. You wouldn't blame him for that. The wind sighs again, slipping through the shutters. You close your eyes, and for a brief second, you swear you hear footsteps. Soft, slow, pacing just beyond the door. You don't move. Fear would be pointless here. Whatever it isn't cruel. The sound fades, replaced by stillness so complete it hums. You exhale through your nose, slow, careful. The air warms slightly, like something satisfied. You smile. Good night, you whisper. An hour later, you wake to the faint sound of laughter, distant, thin, carried on the gale, not mocking, not human, just wind remembering joy. You roll over and let it pass through you. The blanket feels heavier now, as if someone draped an extra layer across your shoulders. Maybe it's imagination, maybe it's gratitude. You decide not to question kindness in a place that rarely offers it. By dawn, the wind is gone. Outside, everything is still. The snow glitters with strange patterns, spirals, curves, loops that look deliberate. You kneel and touch one with your glove. It's smooth and warm against your palm, impossible. You chuckle softly. Nice handwriting, you say to no one. The silence doesn't argue, it never does. Back inside, the fire has burned low, but the air feels lighter, somehow awake. You pour water into a pot and hum the same tune you heard in the chimney. Maybe you're singing with ghosts. Maybe you've just become one of the voices the wind will carry someday. Either way, the mountain doesn't mind. It's good company. You find the compass one morning, half buried near the stream bed, its glass fogged and needled still. The brass casing is dented, the metal cold enough to sting your palm. You brush away frost and squint through the cloudy cover. The arrow doesn't move. It just trembles slightly, undecided. You laugh quietly. Out here, even direction seems to lose faith. The mountains stretch in every direction anyway. North, south. They all lead to hunger. The old trappers trusted instinct over instruments. They said compasses lied when they got lonely. Iron in the mountains pulled at the needle, twisting truth into confusion, so they learned to navigate by signs less certain but more honest. The smell of pine, the shape of ridges, the sound of running water. Civilization calls that guesswork. The wilderness calls it intuition. Both words mean the same thing when you can't afford to be wrong. You hold the compass up to the light. It catches the sun briefly, flashing gold before returning to dull brass. The needle wiggles again, lazy, as if waking from a long dream. You're not sure either, you whisper. The device says nothing, of course, but that feels appropriate. You tuck it into your coat pocket anyway, a relic of orientation in a place that refuses to be mapped. Maybe broken direction is better than none. Later that afternoon, you climb the ridge. Snow squeaks underfoot, wind pressing hard at your back. Each step feels like argument, your body pleading for rest, the world insisting on motion. You pull out the compass again, watch the arrow shiver. It points vaguely toward the horizon, though you suspect that's more optimism than magnetism. You smile. Maybe that's all navigation ever was. Conviction pretending to be science. Halfway up, clouds roll in, thick and fast. Visibility drops to a few feet. The world turns to blur. You pause, breath sharp in your throat. The compass needle spins suddenly, frantic, direction dissolving into panic. You stare, amused. All right, you murmur. I'll guess. You pocket it again and keep walking, trusting your own sense of forward. The storm howls but doesn't stop you. The mountain rewards movement, not certainty. When the wind dies, you find yourself somewhere unfamiliar, a clearing surrounded by tall pines heavy with snow. The air smells older here, thicker somehow. You feel watched, but not unwelcome. You take out the compass once more. This time, the needle steadies, pointing back the way you came. Of course, you whisper, smiling. It only finds north once you stop needing it. You set camp there, under the tree's protection. The fire burns small but steady, smoke curling upward in silver threads. The compass lies beside you on the ground, gleaming faintly in firelight. You think about all the times you've mistaken motion for progress, survival for success. Maybe the truest direction isn't where you're going, but what you're still willing to carry. The compass hums faintly in the heat, expansion, not message, but it feels like agreement. The next morning, sunlight filters through snow-dusted branches. You pick up the compass again. The needle points true, sharp and unwavering. You laugh out loud. Now you know? The sound of your voice startles a bird from a nearby branch. It flaps away, scattering frost. You pocket the compass and start walking downhill, the snow crunching beneath your boots. The path feels new, though you suspect it's the same one you took before. That's the trick of mountains. They always look different after humility. By afternoon, your cabin reappears through the trees, smoke rising from the chimney like a memory returning. You stop at the door, hand resting on the latch. The compass warms in your pocket, almost alive. You whisper, "Thanks for getting lost with me." The wind stirs briefly in response, half laugh, half nod. You step inside, closing the door on direction and keeping the lesson. Later, you place the compass on the shelf above the fire. Its glass clears completely now, the needle resting steady. You stare at it for a while, smiling faintly. You've learned what every mountain man eventually learns, that guidance isn't about finding the way. It's about walking long enough to stop needing one. One morning, you catch your reflection in the frozen lake. It startles you, not because it's unfamiliar, but because it isn't. The face staring back looks calm, tired, and certain in a way yours never did before. Ice doesn't lie, but it also doesn't flatter. Every scar, every line of windburn, every piece of time is there. You kneel closer, breath fogging the surface. The reflection wavers, but doesn't break. For a second, you think it's waiting for you to speak first. There's a strange intimacy in recognizing yourself after months of silence. Civilization keeps mirrors everywhere, but it also keeps distraction. Out here, reflection feels more like confrontation. You study the eyes in the ice, older, smaller somehow, but focused. You whisper, "So, this is who made it." The voice sounds foreign. The reflection doesn't answer, but its stillness feels approving, like a teacher letting a student finish the thought alone. You remember how you looked when you first arrived. Face too clean, confidence too loud. Back then, you mistook survival for heroism. Now, you know better. Endurance doesn't roar. It whispers. It adapts. It forgives quietly. You run your hand across the ice, tracing the outline of your reflection. The cold seeps into your fingertips, numbing them instantly. You don't flinch. Pain has become another form of introduction. Every sting says, "You're still here." There's a legend told by the tribes who lived here long before you, that ice holds memory. They believed frozen water kept the images of everything it had ever reflected. Each thaw released stories back into the air. Faces, sounds, breath. You wonder if that means the lake remembers everyone who's looked into it. Hunters, wanderers, ghosts. Maybe it remembers you now, too. The thought feels strange, comforting, almost immortal. You take a piece of broken ice and hold it to the light. Inside it, air bubbles shimmer like trapped constellations. You turn it slowly, watching it refract the sun into shards of color. beauty like that feels undeserved. You pocket the fragment, small enough to melt by evening. Some treasures aren't meant to last. The wilderness teaches that better than scripture. Later, as you sit by your fire, the ice shard begins to soften in your hand. Droplets run down your fingers, leaving faint trails of cold. You hold it up again, now clear, formless, uncatchable. It's no less beautiful. You smile. Maybe that's the real trick of survival. To melt without disappearing. The water drips onto the floor, joining a dark patch that will vanish by morning. Some remnants are meant to be temporary. That doesn't make them less sacred. That night, you dream of faces in the ice, dozens, hundreds, all looking back. Not accusing, not admiring, just acknowledging. You recognize none of them, yet somehow they feel familiar. Each one nods once, as if to say, you've joined the record. You wake before dawn, heart calm, the air cold and forgiving. Outside, the lake glows under a thin layer of frost, already beginning to forget you. You walk to the shore and breathe on the surface, melting a small circle into transparency. Your reflection appears again, softer now, less distinct. You whisper, "Don't remember me too clearly." The ice doesn't promise anything, but the silence feels kind. You dip your finger into the hole, tracing ripples outward. The movement distorts your face until it disappears. It's oddly satisfying, watching yourself dissolve into water and light. When you return to the cabin, you write a single line in your journal. The mountain remembers in its own way. That's enough. You close the book gently, setting it near the fire to dry. Outside, snow begins again. Slow, steady, endless. The reflection is gone now, but the awareness lingers. You don't need mirrors anymore. The wilderness has already shown you everything that matters. You lean back, feeling the warmth soak into your bones. For the first time, you realize you've stopped counting days. The storm, the hunger, the frost, they've all blurred into one long breath. And for the first time, that feels like peace. The walls creak again tonight, though there's no wind outside. The sound feels familiar now, like a thought, stretching after a long rest. You sit on the floor, near the hearth, back against the logs, staring at the ceiling beams. The cabin breathes with you, wood expanding, settling, remembering. The smell of pine smoke and damp fur hangs thick in the air. You exhale slowly. Sometimes it feels less like you built this cabin and more like it built you. It started as protection, nothing more. 4 walls against a storm. But months of solitude transform purpose. You've memorized every knot in the wood, every stain on the floor, every draft sneaking through the gaps. When light hits just right, the space glows amber, small, soft, almost holy. Civilization builds homes for comfort. The wilderness builds them for reflection. In the stillness, walls become mirrors. You begin to hear your own thoughts echo back in their creaks. Each log was cut by hand. You remember swinging the axe, every strike a conversation with exhaustion. The rhythm of chopping was the first music you trusted here. Now the axe leans in the corner, blade dull, handle cracked. You can't bring yourself to repair it. It's earned its rest. You run a hand along the wall and think, this is the sound of my heartbeat translated into wood. The cabin isn't shelter anymore. It's memory given shape. You notice how silence behaves inside. It doesn't sit still, and it moves softly like dust drifting through light. You can almost hear your thoughts brushing against it. Sometimes you talk aloud, not to break the quiet, but to make sure your voice still belongs to you. The cabin answers with small noises, a board settling, the stove ticking. It's polite, never intrusive. You've grown to prefer this kind of company. There's a phrase the trappers used. The walls close in when the heart opens. You finally understand it. Isolation doesn't shrink you. It concentrates you. Each night spent here chisels away something unnecessary. Fear, pride, expectation, all scraped down until only function remains. You've become efficient in thought the same way you've become efficient in movement. You waste nothing, not even loneliness. It's all fuel. You carve small marks into one wall, not tallying days, just impressions, a scratch for every storm survived, every fire rekindled, every moment that almost broke you. The marks mean nothing to anyone else, but to you they read like scripture. You think, maybe faith isn't belief in something unseen. Maybe it's remembering what already happened. The cabin holds that memory without judgment. It knows who you are, who you were, and what parts you left outside to freeze. When the wind does return, the sound inside is different. The walls don't groan in fear anymore. They hum in unison. The cabin no longer resists the mountain. It joins it. You realize you've done the same. The wilderness hasn't changed you. It's revealed what was underneath. All you had to do was stay long enough for silence to translate itself. Tonight, as you prepare to sleep, you run your hand along the wood again. It's warm. Faintly, impossibly. You smile. Maybe it's just the fire's heat. Or maybe the cabins learned how to give some back. You lie down, and the walls whisper softly as they cool. The last thing you hear before drifting off is your own heartbeat reflected back through timber, slow, steady, alive. In this world, that's as close to prayer as you'll ever need. It happens quietly. One morning, you wake up and the world isn't falling anymore. No flakes against the window, no hiss on the roof, no muffled groan from the trees. The silence feels suspicious, almost theatrical. You pull on your boots and step outside. The air is blinding, not from brightness, but from stillness. The snow stretches forever, untouched, flawless. The storm has stopped not because it ran out of power, but because it said everything it needed to. Your breath hangs in the air like punctuation. Each exhale a small cloud, each inhale a question. You stand there, unsure what to do without resistance. For months, you've fought the weather, the cold, your own hunger, and now nothing fights back. The quiet feels heavy. You realize that surviving was never the goal. Surviving after is harder. No wind to push against, no crisis to define you. The mountain's final test is peace. You walk toward the ridge where you once nearly froze. The path is familiar but unrecognizable. No tracks remain, not even your own. Each step sinks deep into snow so soft it sighs underfoot. Sunlight drips across the peaks, slow and gold, touching the world with warmth too fragile to trust. You squint, half expecting the blizzard to return. It doesn't. You smile despite yourself. The silence feels earned. You pause beside the frozen river. Its surface gleams now like polished marble. You remember listening to it months ago, hearing the hum of movement beneath the ice. You kneel, press your ear against it again. This time, you hear nothing, but it's not emptiness. It's rest. Even the river deserves a nap. You whisper, "You did good," and pat the ice once before standing. The sound echoes faintly, as if the world is whispering thanks back. The forest looks different too. Branches once burdened by snow now stretch upward, free and skeletal, black against blue. You notice how beautiful they are in their nakedness. The world feels both smaller and larger without the storm. You breathe deep. The air smells faintly of thawing sap and faraway pine smoke. Civilization might call that spring, but you just call it mercy. By the time you return to your cabin, the roof has started dripping. Tiny rivulets of meltwater trace paths down the walls, catching light like veins of silver. You stand in the doorway, boots still crusted with snow, and watch the first icicle break loose and fall. It lands with a delicate sound, the faintest clink, but somehow it feels monumental. The mountain is exhaling. The season is shifting. You feel your chest mirror it. Inside, the fire burns low, content with its new role. You sit down and pour the last of your water into a pot, not out of need, but ritual. Steam curls upward in soft shapes, ghosting the air. You realize you've spent months here waiting for exactly this moment. Not warmth, not rescue, but quiet enough to hear yourself exist without struggle. That's the real survival. Being alive after danger stops being the reason. Outside, the last gust of wind brushes against the cabin. It sounds less like goodbye and more like applause. You laugh softly. You win, you tell the mountains, though you both know that's not true. The truth is simpler. No one wins here. You just coexist. And sometimes, coexistence feels like grace. You close the door gently, the latch clicking like a final heartbeat of winter. Inside, the air hums with stillness, deep and golden. You sit by the window watching sunlight pool on the floorboards. No snow, no storm, no noise, just you and the sound of melting. And somehow that's the most beautiful sound of all. The silence feels heavier now, almost alive. You wake to it the way you'd wake to the sound of rain. Slow, reluctant, curious. The air in the cabin is pale blue, lit by the weak dawn that slips through the frosted window. You sit up, blanket falling to your lap, and notice the absence of movement. The world outside has stopped breathing loud. You listen harder. Even stillness has a tone. You step out into the morning. The snow has hardened overnight, its surface smooth as glass. Your boots don't sink anymore, they glide. Each step echoes softly, crisp but kind. You can smell the faint sweetness of pine buried deep beneath the frost. The air doesn't sting this time. It greets you. You close your eyes and realize this is the first morning that doesn't feel like defense. The mountains around you stretch under the light, old and unashamed. The wind no longer bites, it whispers. You exhale, watching your breath fade into the stillness. Everything looks too pure to touch, like the earth pressed pause. You feel that pause inside you, too. Survival used to mean movement. Now it means stillness without fear. The realization makes your throat tighten for reasons you can't name. You find a small ridge above the cabin and sit, knees to your chest. The snow beneath you squeaks faintly, polite. The horizon blurs between silver and gold, and you let the light soak into your skin. The world feels suspended in amber. For a moment, you forget what hunger felt like, what pain sounded like. You just breathe. The mountain doesn't reward you for surviving. It simply acknowledges it. Your hands are rough now, skin cracked, fingerprints faded. You rub your palms together and watch tiny flecks of ash fall from your sleeves. You wonder how many fires you've built, how many times you've asked flame for permission to keep living. You realize you never truly tamed it. You just earned its patience. You smile softly. Everything here works that way. Mercy disguised as routine. The silence deepens. It's not the kind that demands reverence, but the kind that listens back. You can almost hear your heartbeat echo against the slope of the mountain. It's slow, steady, and somehow more confident than your voice ever was. You realize the wilderness never needed your strength. It only asked for your rhythm. A raven drifts overhead, wings slicing through the cold air. It caws once, sharp and confident, before vanishing into the distance. The sound is the only proof that time still moves. You whisper, "Good luck," though you're not sure for whom. Out here, every living thing is a mirror. Every voice that breaks the silence feels like your own reflection answering back. You return to the cabin before the wind shifts. The air inside tastes of wood and smoke. Home, if that word means anything here. You pour water into the pot and light a small flame. The fire catches instantly, obedient, almost affectionate. You sit and watch it grow, the light flickering softly across your face. The silence joins you at the table. You don't mind. It's a better guess now. When you drink, the heat burns faintly down your throat, and you smile through it. You think about the months spent arguing with this land, the storms, the hunger, the long nights without fire. You realize you weren't fighting nature at all. You were fighting your own refusal to be small. The mountain never wanted your strength. It wanted your surrender. You glance at the door. Snowlight spills in through the cracks, painting thin lines across the floor. You whisper, "We're still here," and the cabin creaks softly in reply. For the first time, you believe it's listening. The silence isn't absence anymore. It's proof that nothing else needs to be said. You lean back, close your eyes, and let your heartbeat fade into the room's quiet hum. You think, this is what survival sounds like when it stops needing applause. And slowly, gently, you drift between breath and dream. The fire tonight is barely more than a sigh, a faint thread of orange glowing inside the stove. You kneel close, palms open, feeling its pulse through the iron. It's weaker now, but calmer too. Flames used to roar here, desperate to prove something. This one doesn't. It just exists, small but sufficient. You smile. You've learned to trust that kind of quiet. You feed it a single twig, listening to the hiss as sap meets heat. The smell fills the air. Pine, smoke, and memory. The sound isn't loud, it's steady, like breathing beside you in a dark room. You whisper, "Good job," half joking, half sincere. The flame flickers brighter for a heartbeat before settling again. You've come to love how it answers without words. Fire teaches patience better than prayer. It reminds you that even light depends on timing. Feed it too quickly, and it suffocates. ignore it, and it fades without ceremony. You realize people are the same. You spent years feeding your ambition until it burned you. Now you've learned to add warmth slower, with intention. You laugh softly, shaking your head. The wilderness really is the best teacher, brutal, but never dishonest. Outside, the night presses close to the cabin walls, soft and unthreatening. The air hums faintly, a tune only solitude could compose. You look at the window, a small square of darkness reflecting your face. The flicker of the fire turns your eyes gold. You look older, calmer. The version of you who arrived here would never recognize this one. That thought doesn't sadden you. It feels like proof that change can happen quietly. You lean back, resting against the wall, and let the warmth creep up your legs. The boards beneath you radiate heat, slow and dependable. You listen to the faint pop of burning resin, the gentle hum of expanding wood. You don't want to sleep yet. You just want to exist in this rhythm. Inhale, exhale, flicker, glow. The fire has stopped being an object. It's a heartbeat that happens to burn. You think about all the men who froze beside their fires, too proud to tend them properly, too tired to care. You wonder if their flames looked like this before fading. There's a strange nobility in a dying light. Not tragic, just honest. It doesn't beg to stay. It burns as long as it can, and when it ends, it does so without drama. You envy that kind of simplicity. The fire shifts, snapping lightly. You open your eyes, half smiling. "I know," you whisper. Sleep is coming. You toss one last piece of wood onto the coals and watch it catch slowly. The glow expands, gold, soft, forgiving. You close your eyes again, letting the warmth slide across your chest. Somewhere outside, a wolf howls once, far away, but gentle. Even wildness has learned to lower its voice tonight. You drift between waking and rest, the fire's light painting slow patterns on your eyelids. Each flicker feels like a small memory, warmth from another lifetime. You imagine this flame surviving the night, still alive at dawn. That thought feels sacred. You smile faintly and whisper one last thing. Stay. And whether it's the flame or your own breath that answers, you can't tell. Sleep folds over you like ash settling on ember. Quietly, completely, beautifully. You wake without knowing what hour it is. The light filtering through the cracks looks neither like morning nor evening. It's something in between, gold fading into grey. You lie there for a long moment, listening. The wind has stopped entirely. No movement, no rhythm. Just the kind of silence that asks you to measure yourself against it. You don't feel urgency anymore. You don't even feel the need to name the time. You've drifted out of the world's clock. You sit up, rubbing your face. The air inside the cabin is cool and dry, faintly smelling of smoke and leather. The kettle on the stove is cold, untouched since yesterday. Or was it yesterday? It doesn't matter. The concept of before has blurred into texture, not chronology. You realize that out here, time isn't something that passes, it's something that melts. It doesn't flow forward, it softens around you until you stop noticing where it starts or ends. You step outside barefoot, feeling the snow's crust give way under your feet. It doesn't sting anymore. The cold feels like touch, not punishment. Your breath floats up and vanishes. a small offering to the morning. The light tastes thin, the air almost sweet. You stand still long enough for the frost to lace over your toes again. It's a strange comfort, knowing that even motionless, you're part of the world's slow machinery. The mountains stretch like sleeping giants. Their ridges fade into haze. You can't tell if they're real or just the dream of someone larger. Somewhere far below, a raven circles soundlessly as though gliding through memory instead of air. You smile. Everything has softened. The light, the sound, even your sense of self. Maybe that's what peace really means. Not the absence of hardship, but the loss of hard edges. You laugh softly at the thought, and even your laughter sounds muted, like it's wearing fur. Back inside, the cabin glows faintly with morning light. Dust dances in the air, catching gold in its slow-motion orbit. You watch it swirl, hypnotized. You think, this is time. This is how it moves when no one is counting it. The clock you once carried in your chest, ambition, urgency, dread, has gone quiet. There's only rhythm now. Breath in, breath out. Wood creaks. Flame hums. Each sound belongs exactly where it happens, unhurried. You boil water, watching the bubbles rise in lazy patterns. The steam curls upward, twisting like smoke from an unseen fire. You trace the shape of it with your finger, half smiling. Even the steam seems reluctant to leave. You sip slowly, the heat slipping into you like a secret. The taste is nothing special, just boiled snow, but it feels infinite. Every swallow erases another need to rush. You move through the cabin like a ghost, rearranging small things for no reason. You smooth the blanket. You adjust the chair. You watch a single ember drift from the fire to the floor, where it fades without complaint. You think of people who live their lives chasing moments, collecting proof they existed. And you wonder, what if existing quietly is the greater rebellion? The thought lingers, weightless but firm. You let it settle beside you, like a tame animal deciding to stay. Later, as evening creeps in unnoticed, you light a candle. Its flame shivers, thin but unwavering. The shadows stretch slowly along the walls, then merge. It feels like the world has exhaled once, long and deep, and chosen not to inhale again for a while. You match its rhythm easily, breathing slower, eyes heavy. Time doesn't end here, it dissolves. You lie down, staring at the ceiling beams, which glow softly in the flicker. You can't tell how long you've been watching them. Minutes, hours, seasons. You no longer care. Your heartbeat has synced with the flame's movement. Your mind floats just above waking, suspended in warmth. And in that strange in-between, you realize the truth. When time finally loses its edges, so do you. You climb before dawn, the air still half asleep. The slope crunches beneath your boots, the rhythm steady, deliberate. You've made this climb before, but today feels different, lighter somehow. The horizon glows faint grey, the first blush of something gentler than sunrise. You stop often, not from exhaustion, but from wonder. It's as if the world is remembering how to breathe, and you're patient enough to listen. When you reach the ridge, the view steals every word you didn't plan to say. The clouds hang low, soft as wool. The valley below is still wrapped in shadow, quiet, and infinite. The light touches only the peaks for now, painting them gold like they're being forgiven. You sit down in the snow, breath trembling, and whisper, "I get it." The mountain doesn't answer, but somehow it feels like it's nodding. You stay there until the sun finally clears the ridge. Its warmth lands on your face, thin, hesitant, but real. You close your eyes and feel your skin drink it in. For months, you begged for warmth and feared it in equal measure. Now, you understand it's not a gift, it's a rhythm. Cold exists so heat can feel earned. You smile. Even gratitude has learned to whisper. Below you, mist rises from the forest, curling into soft towers that vanish before they finish forming. Each breath of fog feels alive, like the mountain exhaling its own dreams. You sit cross-legged, palms open to the air, and let the warmth soak into your fingers. You realize you're not observing the world anymore. You're participating. Every flicker of light, every breath of wind, every slow drift of snow belongs to the same pulse. You laugh quietly. "So this is it," you say. And maybe it is. You think of everyone who's ever stood on a ridge like this. Hunters, monks, wanderers, the lonely and the lost. Maybe all of them came looking for the same thing. Not answers, but understanding. You picture their faces fading into the morning light, their names dissolving into air. They're not gone. They've just joined the rhythm. The mountain doesn't bury people. It absorbs them. It keeps their patience, their quiet, their lessons. You reach out and press your palm flat against the snow. It's cold, yes, but alive, humming faintly beneath your skin. You whisper, "Thank you," and mean it. Gratitude feels simpler now. It doesn't reach upward anymore. It spreads outward like warmth through wood, like light through breath. You realize you've stopped wanting things to change. You just want to keep noticing that they do. You stay there until the sun climbs higher, until the shadow of your cabin disappears. By then, the air smells like thawing pine and wet bark. A small bird lands near your boot, tilts its head, and hops closer. You laugh softly. You made it too, you tell it. It chirps once, unimpressed but comfortable, then flies away. You watch it vanish into light that's too bright to follow. The sky opens wider, and for the first time, you don't look away. The warmth deepens. Your coat feels too heavy, your breath too visible. You remove your gloves and let the air bite at your fingers. It doesn't hurt, it clarifies. You lift your hand, watch the sun pass through the cracks between your fingers. Every line, every scar glows briefly before fading. You whisper, "Still here," and grin. You're not talking to the mountain anymore, you're talking to yourself. You walk back down slowly, snow melting under your boots. The world feels brighter, louder, kinder. You stop halfway, turning once to look at the ridge. It stands there, unmoved but not indifferent. You bow slightly, an instinct older than language. When you finally turn toward home, you realize something strange. The sky hasn't opened. You have. The world is asleep again. You can tell by the sound, or rather, the absence of it. Even the forest has stopped shifting. The night presses against your cabin like a slow heartbeat, steady and low. You sit before the fire, its glow soft and liquid, painting the walls gold. The air smells of ash, smoke, and pine resin. Every crackle feels like the page of an old book turning itself. You've read this story for months now, and you finally understand its ending. You lean closer to the flames, hands open, feeling the pulse of warmth drift up your wrists. The fire has learned your rhythm, brightening when you lean in, softening when you breathe out. You no longer feed it with urgency, only gratitude. Each log you add feels like punctuation, not survival. The wilderness has stopped trying to kill you because you've stopped trying to control it. Now, you both just exist, shoulder to shoulder, in quiet truce. A small ember breaks free, rolling across the floor like a star in exile. You watch it fade, sighing. Every ending here is gentle. Things don't vanish. They return to air, to silence, to memory. You realize that's all fire ever wanted. Not to burn, but to transform. You smile. Maybe that's what you've been doing all along. Outside, the wind brushes the window pane once, then stops. The sound feels like a farewell that doesn't require words. You look up, seeing your own reflection ghosted against the dark glass. For a second, you see two fires, the one behind you and the one inside your eyes. They look the same. You whisper, "Thank you," and mean both. The room breathes warmth around you, every shadow slow and alive. You imagine every person who's ever sat before a flame, thousands of years of faces flickering in the same orange light, kings, wanderers, lovers, monks, all of them chasing warmth, all of them finding it too briefly. The thought doesn't make you sad. It makes you proud to belong to something so ancient. You pour the last of your coffee into a tin cup. It's bitter, smoky, perfect. You raise it slightly toward the fire in a toast. "To the stubborn ones," you murmur. "To the ones who stayed." The fire crackles once. Agreement. You drink, letting the taste linger longer than it should. As night deepens, the flames shrink, leaving a bed of glowing coals. They pulse softly, like sleeping hearts. You lie on the floor beside them, wrapped in your blanket, face warm, back cold. It's a contrast you've grown to love, proof that comfort is always half-earned. You stare until the world blurs, eyes heavy. The line between light and dark fades, replaced by the soft hum of belonging. Before you drift away, you whisper, "You did good," to the coals. They flicker once, polite acknowledgement. You close your eyes, and for a moment, it feels like they close theirs too. When sleep finally takes you, it's not escape, it's ceremony. You and the fire resting together, both content with how little remains to be done. By dawn, the fire will be gone. But its warmth will linger in the walls, in the air, in you, and that's enough. You wake before sunrise. The world feels washed clean. The air is sharper, clearer, almost new. You sit up slowly, stretching your hands toward where the fire used to be. Only ash now, grey, cool, but beautiful. The faintest curl of smoke rises, like memory exhaling. You touch the remains gently. They crumble into your fingertips, soft as flour. Nothing of the flame remains, yet somehow it feels more present than ever. You stand and open the cabin door. Cold air rushes in, pure, crisp, kind. The horizon blushes faintly, light creeping through in thin ribbons. It's not dramatic, this sunrise. It's quiet, almost embarrassed. The kind of morning that doesn't announce itself, just arrives. You breathe it in and taste the first hint of thaw. Outside, the snow has begun to sag, heavy with the promise of melt. Icicles drip steadily, each drop landing with a sound like ticking clocks. Time, it seems, has remembered itself. You watch the first rays of sunlight slide across the mountains, turning frost to gold. Everything that tried to kill you is now beautiful. You smile. Survival looks good in hindsight. You walk to the edge of the clearing. The snow crunches beneath your boots, soft but sure. The trees sway gently, shaking off winter like an old coat. You tilt your head back and close your eyes. The sunlight hits your face, warm, familiar, undeserved, yet freely given. You whisper, "So this is what mercy feels like." The world hums faintly around you. The mountain doesn't speak, but you understand it anyway. Every gust of wind, every drip of meltwater, every creak of thawing branch, it all says the same thing. You can rest now. You nod, letting the words settle somewhere beneath your ribs. For the first time in months, you believe them. You return to the cabin, gather your few belongings. The space looks smaller now, the way childhood bedrooms do when revisited. You run your hand along the wall, feeling every dent and scar. You whisper goodbye to the silence, to the smell of pine and smoke. You'll carry them with you, even if the world forgets to. Some homes aren't left behind, they follow. When you step outside again, the sun has fully risen. The light scatters across the valley, filling it with slow fire. You take one last look at the cabin, your heartbeat carved in wood, and smile. You think of all the nights you swore you wouldn't make it, and how you did anyway. Not through strength, through surrender. The kind that only comes after you stop asking to be spared. You start walking downhill. The snow gives way to mud, then to earth. Your boots leave deep prints, the kind that will disappear by noon. You don't look back. You don't need to. The mountain doesn't demand reverence. It only asks that you walk gently, knowing what it gave you. At the edge of the forest, you pause. The air is different here. Warmer, thinner, alive. You whisper, "Thank you," to no one in particular. The wind answers softly, wrapping around you like an old friend. You breathe in once, deep and slow, and smile. You've survived the deadliest winter on Earth. And somehow it feels less like victory or pay, and more like peace. You walk until the mountain fades behind you. The air softens, the snow becomes mud, then grass, then soil that smells alive again. You keep your pace slow, not from fatigue, but reverence. Each step feels like a translation, the wild teaching the world how to pronounce your name. You've forgotten when you last spoke aloud. You don't need to anymore. The silence learned it first, and that's enough. The sun climbs higher, tracing gold across your shoulders. The warmth feels different now, less like comfort, more like permission. You used to think the wilderness was an enemy, that survival was resistance. Now you know the truth. The mountain wasn't testing you. It was teaching you how to stay, how to listen. Every frostbitten night, every growl of hunger, every flicker of flame, all of it was language. And you finally understand what it said. You reach a rise where the valley opens wide, a stretch of green veined with the last of winter's white. From here, the world looks endless, not vast in a way that overwhelms you, vast in a way that forgives you. The wind slides past your ears, calm, patient, familiar. You could swear it murmurs your name, but softer this time, as if not to wake the earth. You laugh quietly. It's not an echo, it's recognition. You sit down in the grass. The ground is warm, breathing beneath you. You run your fingers through the soil and feel the pulse of it. Faint, steady, eternal. The smell rises, damp and sweet, like the inside of old wood or the memory of rain. You close your eyes. The forest hums in the distance, a low song of renewal. You wonder how many men have done this before you, walked into the unknown, learned humility, and returned quieter than they left. It feels sacred to be one of them. Somewhere behind you, snow is melting into rivers. Somewhere ahead, spring is writing its first chapters. You're caught between seasons, between endings and beginnings. And for once, you don't want to rush through either. You want to linger, to stretch the silence, to let gratitude dry slow. Civilization might call this stillness. The mountain would call it prayer. You lie back, eyes on the open sky. It's impossibly blue, the kind of color that makes you forget language. Clouds move like thought, unhurried, shapeless, free. You think of firelight reflected in your eyes, of frost under your palms, of a compass that finally stopped spinning. Every piece of the winter lives in you now, rearranged into peace. You whisper, "I'll remember." But you know you don't need to. The remembering is mutual. As the wind brushes past, it carries the faint scent of smoke, old, friendly, belonging. You picture your cabin far away, its roof shining under the morning light. You know it's still there, the fire cold but not dead, waiting for another wanderer to arrive with trembling hands and restless eyes. You smile at the thought. Maybe the mountain will teach them the same things. Or maybe it will teach them something entirely different. That's its way. It gives each person a mirror of what they need most. You close your eyes one final time. The world hums steady beneath you, vast but kind. You no longer feel small here. You just feel placed. The wind exhales once more, a final benediction, brushing your hair from your forehead like a hand too old to rush. And in that moment, you understand something so simple, you almost laugh. You didn't survive the mountain, it survived you. When you finally rise, the day has fully bloomed. You start walking again, slower now, lighter. The trail bends forward into sunlight, and the air tastes like forgiveness. Each step leaves a print that melts almost instantly. And that's okay. You were never meant to stay. You were meant to be carried by memory, by wind, by story. Somewhere far behind you, snow drips softly into silence. Somewhere far ahead, spring waits patiently for your arrival. And between them, right here, right now, the world breathes your name one last time and lets you go.